Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I understand today is a courtesy, am I right? Okay. Yes, Saturday is a courtesy, we all know what the implications of that are. Today is also Gita Jayanti, the day Lord Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita, so it's also a very significant day in that respect. It's something we can meditate on today. And we can also try and play our part in the ongoing mission of Bhagavad Gita to deliver the confused living entities. So today we're going to read from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 28, Kapila's Instructions on Devotional Service. Text 43. Swayonishu yatajo tir, ekam nana pratiyate, yoni nam guna vaishamyat, tatatma prakrito stita. Word for word we can do responsively. Swayonishu, in forms of wood. Yata, as. Jyoti, fire. Ekam, one. Nana, differently. Pratiyate, is exhibited. Yoninam, of different wombs. Guna Vaishamyat, from the different conditions of the modes. Tata, so. Atma, the spirit soul. Prakrito, in the material nature. Stita, situated. Translation. As fire is exhibited in different forms of wood, so, under different conditions of the modes of material nature, the pure spirit soul manifests itself in different bodies. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Almost at the end of this chapter. It is to be understood that the body is designated. Prakriti is an interaction by the three modes of material nature. And according to these modes, someone has a small body and someone has a very large body. For example, the fire in a big piece of wood appears very big, and in a stick, the fire appears small. Actually, the quality of fire is the same everywhere, but the manifestation of material nature is such that according to the fuel, the fire appears bigger and smaller. Similarly, the soul in the universal body, although of the same quality, is different from the soul in the smaller body. The small particles of soul are just like sparks of the larger soul. The greatest soul is the super soul, but the super soul is quantitatively different from the small soul. The super soul is described in the Vedic literature as the supplier of all necessities of the smaller soul. Nityo Nityanam. One who understands this distinction between the super soul and the individual soul is above lamentation and is in a peaceful position. When the smaller soul thinks himself quantitatively as big as the larger soul, he is under the spell of Maya, for that is not his constitutional position. No one can become the greater soul simply by mental speculation. The smallness or greatness of different souls is described in the Varaha Purana as Swangsha Vibhinangsha. The Swangsha soul is the supreme personality of Godhead, and the Vibhinangsha soul, or small particles, are eternally small particles, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Mamai Vangsho Jivaloke Jivabhuta Sanatana. The small living entities are eternally part and parcel, and therefore it is not possible for them to be quantitatively as great as the supersoul. Swayonishu yata jyotir ekam nana pratiyate yoni nam guna vaishamyat tatatma prakrito stita. As fire is exhibited in different forms of wood, so under different conditions of the modes of material nature, the pure spirit soul manifests itself in different bodies. Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Bishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale. Swayam Rupagadhanayam Dadati Swadahantikam. Vanchakalpatarubhyas Chakripa Sindhivya Chapaditana Padnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasti Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So the same theme is here as yesterday, developing on the point a little further, that as fire is exhibited to different degrees, in different ways, in different forms of wood, so under different conditions of the modes of material nature, the pure spirit soul manifests itself in different bodies. An example which is given, something similar to this, is that you may take one of these light bulbs up here, and here we see them in their natural state more or less, with clear glass, so there's clear light coming. But if we paint some red paint over the light bulbs, and then we switch on the lights, then we may think, oh, there's red light. Actually, the light is the same clear light, but there's a certain covering. And so the light is manifesting in front of us in a perceivable form in terms of the covering, and not really in terms of its intrinsic nature. Or if we painted the light bulbs green or blue, so like this. Very simple point. The same light is there, but there's certain coverings. And depending on the nature of the covering, then the light is being presented before us in a form which we are able to perceive. But generally people, they are identifying not with that, the actual condition, but just with that manifest condition, which is manifest in terms of the covering. So it's a red light, it's a green light, a blue light. Or you may even paint the light bulb very thickly. So there's a thick coat of paint over the entire light bulb, very thick. So then perhaps when you turn it on, you may not see any light. So similarly, there may be different qualities and also different degrees, to the point that you can switch on the light and you may think something is wrong, there's no light. So the spirit souls are inhabiting different bodies, and even though they're essentially equal on the spiritual platform, but in manifest forms, they are being presented to us through the via mediums of different material bodies, which are different combinations of the modes of material nature, actually. So therefore, one person we think, oh, this is a very big person, this is a very small person, this is a very nice person, this is a very unpleasant person, like this. This is a very quiet person, this is a very loud person. So the persons are essentially the same. on the spiritual platform, that there are different coverings, and we are perceiving them in terms of the coverings, and material life means that we're identifying in those terms, that this is the reality, this is who these people are, and life is going on that basis. Even it may be, even it is, that at least at different times, in different lifetimes, or even at different points during the course of one lifetime, that one spirit soul will be manifesting differently. In one lifetime, you may be in a male body. In the next lifetime, you may be in a female body, or in different species, or even in this lifetime, when you're very, very young, then you are a helpless little baby. But then you become a youngster, then you become a youth, then you become a young adult, then you become mature, then you become middle-aged and old, sort of overripe, and you deteriorate. So in these ways it's going on the manifest platform. But here we have the same person, obviously the same person, but manifesting in different terms, under different conditions of the modes of material nature. But we are thinking, oh look, here's a little baby, here's a teenager, here's a middle-aged person, here's an old person, like this. But it's the same person, same person. So how are these differences coming about? They're coming about due to different combinations of the modes of material nature. When a living entity is in the body of a child, then the modes of passion and ignorance are more manifest. Completely ignorant, cannot even speak. And very passionate, many desires, but frustrated due to being unable to pursue those desires and fulfill them. Like this. So the modes of material nature, different conditions of the modes of material nature, same living entity, even in the course of one lifetime, or the same living entities in terms of their constitutional nature, are inhabiting different bodies and their different manifestations externally. And we're identifying in terms of those manifestations. The example here is of different forms of wood. One big log of wood, one small log of wood, one dry log, one wet log. In these ways, you'll get different manifestations of fire. But the wood is the same, but they're just different sizes. So in this context, of course, you have the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the individual souls, the jivas, Swangsha and Vibhinangsha. Swangsha means his own part, himself, in other words, and Vibhinangsha means separated, small parts. Bina means like second, like that. Vibhi means very much, different category of fragment. So, anyway, on the material platform, the conditioned souls are manifesting in different ways in terms of combinations of the modes of material nature. And all we have to do is look around us in the class today, and we see a number of different combinations. Quite a range, a fair range. Of course, you're all very nice devotees, but there are definitely variations and varieties. And in terms of one's past, this is all in terms of the modes of material nature. In the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna quite elaborately discusses this subject, how you can recognize what modes you're under, either in the sense of what mode is most predominantly influencing you, generally on an ongoing basis, or at any particular time, or under certain particular circumstances, what mode will become prominent. Someone, when they are asked to go on book distribution, someone may respond enthusiastically, well, that is transcendental. That is transcendental. Someone may recoil and become a little anxious. This tends to be more the mode of ignorance or passion like this. So, under different circumstances, if someone is confronted in an aggressive way, if they're more in the mode of passion, then they'll also respond aggressively. If they're more in the mode of ignorance, they'll shrink away. But if they're in the mode of goodness, they'll be unaffected and be able to deal with it more nicely. And of course, if they're transcendental, they can take shelter of Krishna and be unaffected. So like this, in the 14th chapter, Lord Krishna explains quite elaborately about the three modes of material nature. Then again in the 17th chapter, most of the 17th chapter is to do with the three modes of material nature, how they're manifesting and how you can recognize them in different ways. And even the 18th chapter also is to a quite significant extent dealing with the modes of material nature, making at least a fairly elaborate summing up of the modes of material nature. So it's interesting. It's interesting and even helpful to some extent to understand what is my position within the modes. Generally, am I more on the passionate side as a general rule? Am I more on the ignorant side? Am I more on the platform of goodness? Not so common these days. Or am I a healthy combination? Of course, there isn't a healthy combination. But just a mixture. It's interesting. And helpful also, to some extent. What is my general state? Krishna talks about foods. That's the first. What sort of foods do I like? Foods in the mode of goodness, or foods in the mode of passion? Am I the type of person who likes to add some chili? I must always have a green chili with my meal, otherwise it's not complete. Anyway, we can look at ourselves and see what's my nature in a general sense, and then by observing ourselves in certain particular types of circumstances, then we can also see that when such and such is the situation, I tend to become like this. And then we can recognize, particularly if there's certain detrimental things which come upon us sometimes when we're faced with certain particular situations, then we can understand, actually, I'm prone to become influenced by the mode of ignorance in this type of situation. So I must learn how to deal with this. In this way, Krishna consciousness is scientific, actually. Krishna consciousness is scientific. And we can gradually elevate ourselves, or at least we can elevate ourselves. Of course, we understand that by simply engaging in devotional service, we become purified and elevated. This is not just like a mechanical, or it's not exactly mechanical, but this is not an ascending process, that we are simply pushing ourselves up. Krishna consciousness is known as a descending process, but we have to also try to facilitate. And when we see there's certain things which need to be addressed within ourselves, then we must try and address them, and not just wait until they get purified away, and in the meantime we think it's all right to have some certain anartha, some certain material conditioning is not wrong. No, devotee does not feel satisfied seeing that I'm influenced by this mode and that, and it's detrimental to my Krishna consciousness. So the devotee is trying to also correct himself or herself. In the 14th chapter, where Lord Krishna is discussing the three modes, then in one of the purports, one of our acharyas, I think Baladev Vijabhushan, he makes an interesting comment. He explains how in the 11th canto, Lord Krishna explains how you can change your position in the modes by making certain adjustments in certain important aspects of your life, and not simply be swept around by the modes. But you can actually, in a voluntary sense and deliberate sense, change your position in the modes and actually to the transcendental platform by adjusting certain important parts of your life, like where you live, the conditions under which you live. You can adjust those. If you allow yourself to live in some dirty place, then the mode of ignorance will become predominant. At least it'll increase. That's a fact. It'll increase. And even though in other areas you may be trying to be better and not be in the mode of ignorance, but by living like that, the mode of ignorance will influence you. By, like Srila Prabhupada made the point, that a Brahmin, we're all meant to be Brahmins or trying to become Brahmins, trying to cultivate Vaishnava Brahminical qualities. So Srila Prabhupada made the point that a Brahmin and dirt are incompatible. If a Brahmin and dirt are brought together, either the dirt will go or the Brahmin will go. Or the Brahmin will cease to be a Brahmin. So it's like that. Yeah. So where we live and the actual location and the conditions under which we live, we can adjust those. We can do something about it. And this will affect our position within the modes, or even in transcendental terms. Who we associate with. This is very important. You can adjust. You can easily adjust who you associate with. And by making that adjustment and changing that influence on you, then your position will change. The food you eat, you can adjust the type of food you eat, and that will affect your position, change your position. The type of clothes you wear, the type of work you do. We're doing transcendental work. And the way in which you conduct yourself in your work. You can adjust the way you apply yourself in your daily activities. Different mantras, what you read, all these things, you can adjust them so that your position within the modes will change. And if you adjust them transcendentally, then they'll help you come to the transcendental platform. So this is a very important thing. This is a very interesting thing, how we can adjust ourselves in order to make our progress in Krishna consciousness easier. We may be blocking our own advancement in some respects by maintaining certain habits, material habits, just because we feel comfortable with them on the material platform. But we may actually be blocking our advancement in Krishna consciousness in some respect by maintaining certain habits, certain conceptions from previously. The time you get your sleeping habits, this is also another thing which you can adjust. These are things which can be easily adjusted. And in this way, your life, your consciousness, your condition will change. So we, of course, as devotees, we should be adjusting in terms of advancing in Krishna consciousness. And Srila Rupa Goswami, when he lists out the 6 principles of surrender, 6 factors which altogether make up surrender. The first 2 are simply matters of adjustment. Accept those things favorable for Krishna consciousness. Reject those things unfavorable. So this is like this, just making certain adjustments. Even if you accept something which is favorable for Krishna consciousness, even if according to your materially conditioned state, you might normally reject them. You might normally not be attracted to those things. But if they're conducive for Krishna consciousness, you accept them. And you reject things which are unfavorable, even if, according to your conditioned state, you would normally like to have those things. You would normally accept them for your personal sense gratification. But surrender means the first 2 steps in surrender. Accept that which is favorable for Krishna, reject that which is unfavorable. So in certain respects, Krishna consciousness, the whole process of Krishna consciousness is based on, or involves, simply making some adjustments. And through those adjustments, we change. And we become Krishna conscious, we become elevated, and our endeavors in devotional service will be more fruitful, or there will be greater purification. We'll be facilitating the potency of Krishna consciousness. So, today is the Gita Jayanti day. Lord Krishna adjusted the consciousness of Arjuna on this day. Arjuna was a little confused, but Lord Krishna explained to him what was right and what was wrong. And by the time Arjuna came out of it, he was completely inspired in Krishna consciousness. Completely inspired. So, we should also try and do the same thing today and help the people to adjust their consciousness by giving them Bhagavad Gita or giving them any of Srila Prabhupada's books. They're all presenting the principles of Bhagavad Gita. Of course, the first thing is we have to adjust ourselves. That's the first thing. According to how much we're adjusted, we'll be able to help other people to adjust. Otherwise, they may adjust us. Or we may get adjusted somehow just by the modes during the day. But no, we become nicely adjusted and nicely fixed in Krishna consciousness, then by Krishna's grace we'll be above the modes. At least enough above the modes that we can carry on, and even though we meet so many different situations, even in one day, but we can carry on enthusiastically giving out Krishna consciousness and benefiting the conditioned souls. Hare Krishna. Okay, so don't forget it's Ekadasi. And remember Lord Krishna on the battlefield, instructing Arjuna. Krishna, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Krishna tells Arjuna that through you I'm instructing humanity. This we know. He's instructing us. So let us try to be like Arjuna at the end of Bhagavad Gita. Not so much like Arjuna at the beginning. You know, having absorbed that transcendental nectar and being benefited by it, and our position having been adjusted by it to the transcendental platform. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.